Kaguya-sama Love is War Ultra Romantic is the third Kaguya-sama season, and unlike the previous seasons, which are mostly episodic, this season, although does have its own episodic episodes, is primarily focused on Ishigami's crush on his older classmate and on the upcoming, I want to say, culture festival and the absolutely impending confession between either Kaguya or Shirogane. Because this season is probably more focused on more heavily narrative content and less on the episodic content, I will have to say that I actually sort of appreciated this season less than previous ones, because although I don't think it's necessarily a bad romantic genre, what I mostly want from Kaguya is as a romantic comedy, and this season had a lot less comedic elements and leaned much more heavily into the dramatic romantic elements, which isn't bad, it's just not necessarily my preference. And it is sort of offset by the fact that Kaguya, by its very nature about two tsunderes in a fucking battle against each other, is a naturally slowly paced show that leans in a lot on old school misunderstanding tropes when it comes to the Ishigami romance, and not necessarily with the Shirogane Kaguya romance, but again, those two are defiantly trying not to confess their feelings to each other. So I did feel like the pacing got a little too slow for me as somewhere in the middle of the show. I think the comedic elements that did end up in the season were pretty effective, and I did also appreciate all of the romantic moments. I think it did hit its emotional beats very well. It just wasn't operating at like a high enough level. It didn't get me enough as I would have liked it to. But also, I think there is probably a little bit of a disadvantage that this show had in that, and I haven't gotten to say this in a long time, I actually have read the manga, and so when the show is setting up these plot points, I actually already knew everything that was going to happen. Not only that, all of the plot threads that this season sets up that wasn't resolved, I know how all those end too. So I wasn't really exactly tense or on the edge of my seat for most of this. And this is why it is so important to remind you that these scores are based on enjoyment and not quality. Because if it's purely quality based, I would actually say that the show is probably better than I'm currently giving it credit for. But I just could not find myself as engaged as I was in prior seasons prior to having watched it. And if I think that says anything, it's probably that I would assume that this season probably has a lower rewatchability than the previous ones, specifically because of its more heavy drama romance focus that I think was handled, again, adequately, but not perfectly. It is all around a good season, and I have no real major complaints about it. It was definitely enjoyable top to bottom. I just didn't hit as hard as I would have liked it to. Twitch and Discord in the description. I've been Sacrobolic, your envoy of hope. Bye-bye.